Good evening and welcome to another episode of Dimelo. Tonight we have El Don Dino, Michaela and JP, Steve, Jay, and Ray. And tonight we're going to be looking at 1968 classic, the dialogue-driven The Lion in Winter, starring Peter O'Toole, Katharine Hepburn, Anthony Hopkins, 21-year-old Timothy Dalton. It's also Anthony Hopkins' first major film. Set in England. It is set during the 11th century, and it's the story of Henry handing off his succession to his children and who he's going to hand it off to. The movie was nominated for many Oscars. It was up for Best Picture, Best Director, Best Screenplay, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Score. It did end up winning Best Actress and Best Score, I believe. So initial thoughts of the film. I apologize first that it was not the shortest film, and I did not consider that when we were going into it. But initial thoughts. Let's kick it over to Jason. Go ahead.
Hey, thank you so much. So this one has been on my radar for a really long time, and I've been wanting to watch it for a really long time, and life. So I'm really happy that this was chosen. My first initial impression of this film was it stinks, not figuratively, literally. Because the whole time I'm watching this thing, right from the onset, I'm like, man, these people are some stinky people living in the castle. It starts off with them like working out in the field or whatever, and then it cuts to him in his bedroom giving himself like a bird bath in his like bird bath sink, and he's just like washing his face. And I'm like, oh, I forgot, this is like the 11th or 12th century or whatever. This thing is going to be pretty stinky. Like, these are some stinky folks. And then the minute I start over anticipating it, the woman who plays Henry's wife, she says, yeah, your son smells like compost. I'm like, of course he does. Like, it's already stinky times, and he won't even do the little bit of bathing. He won't even do his annual river bath like, the people of that time do. So that was my first initial reaction, and I'm not even kidding. This movie is great. It's fantastic. It's laced with all types of, talent. So many good actors, good direction. The script is wonderful. It's Shakespearean almost. But maybe even a little bit more intelligible than Shakespeare, to like the novice ear, I guess. I really like that about it. I liked the monologues. I liked the back and forth. I will say that Peter O'Toole and Katharine Hepburn, oftentimes in this movie, especially their first scene together, it feels like they're in two totally different movies. Like, Katharine Hepburn is doing her usual Katharine Hepburn hamming it up Hollywood thing, and Peter O'Toole is doing like this high sort of Shakespearean language thing, and it's very grounded. And it's just like, what's happening right now? Like I hope the whole movie's not like this, but everybody else seemed to be on the same page. But then there was other scenes with Katharine Hepburn where she's like in scenes with Anthony Hopkins, young Anthony Hopkins, and she's like just totally dominant in the scene. And it's like very, like, her old Hollywood thing just works perfectly playing off him. So, it's a weird mismatch in a lot of ways. But other than that, I will say that I almost feel like Katharine Hepburn's a little miscast in this thing. I hate to say that because she's brilliant. Maybe she is. Also, the age differences in this thing are all over the place because Peter O'Toole is playing a 50-year-old, but I looked it up. He's like 35 or 36 when he films this thing. Katharine Hepburn is already 25 years older than him, which I guess is, that could be possible for the sake of the movie. Like, that's not like too, off. I mean, for whatever, but it is a thing. And then like his son is Anthony Hopkins, his eldest son, and that dude's only 5 years younger than him when they shoot this thing. So those are things that were kind of glaring to me. But all in all, I had a good first take on this movie.
All right, let's kick it over to the next person. What did you think, Ray? What was your initial impression?
Well, way to just drop the bomb, like, right at the start. Wow, there's so much there to unpack. I'm here for it. I'll just right at the bat go. For me, anything that Katharine did brought me into the story, and everything Peter did I'd be like, oh, the scene had a turn right there. I don't buy it. So the reverse happened to me, but I don't know. I'd love to see the sociological perspective as to why I'm following anything Katharine does. Also, initial thoughts were I feel like I have an idea of what Katharine Hepburn looked like, and I have an idea of what Anthony Hopkins looks like. And for me, Anthony Hopkins will always look like Silence of the Lambs, and Katharine Hepburn always looks like, to me, Kate Blanchett. So I'm watching this film, and I'm like, which one is Anthony Hopkins? Like, I don't know. Is it that guy? Is it that guy? And I'm just like typecasting at that point. I'm like, it's the middle one. It must be the middle one because he's the like brooding type. That totally would have been Anthony Hopkins. Totally wrong. And then I'm seeing the Queen, and I'm just like, when does Katharine come into this? I'm really confused. And so that was my initial thoughts. It's just utter confusion. But yeah, and then I think once the King of France comes in and does the little haha, it wasn't love, it was just for this moment to tell the King of England that your son's a fag. That to me is when I started buying all the turns. It started to like really bring me in. I was like, oh, I buy the stakes now. I understand the like chess game that we're playing, and I buy everyone's performance. And not just that, but there was something else I was gonna say. Yeah, well, I guess just up into that point, that's when I was like, oh, okay, I'm buying this kind of fight for power and inability to just make decisions, I guess. Excuse me. Oh, and by saying that too, just the dialogue is fire. The dialogue's fire. Okay, I'm back.
Yeah, the whole time it's back and forth, back and forth. It's definitely like a staccato to the dialogue. It feels like. Let's kick over with Michaela and JP. What do you guys think?
I loved the crap out of this. Like, I thought everyone did such a stellar performance. I genuinely do, especially Anthony Hopkins. Like, if that was like his first big film, like, what a way to start a career. You know, because like I feel like there was so many ways he could have done Richard as a character. Like, especially since he's supposed to be like the strong, brooding warrior out of the three. Like, he's the one who has the most experience with like actual war, but there's just like a sensitivity that he brings to this role that like I don't think any other actor could have. So I was thrilled to see that. Katharine, like, as like, yes, her acting is kind of old-fashioned, but that's why it worked for me, you know, because she's supposed to be like a woman past her prime, clinging onto like the few vegetables of power that she has left. And I also thought Peter's choice of being a jovial king instead of like what we consider a traditional king was brilliant. So I loved all those dynamics that y'all thought were crunchy.
And mid-Atlantic accents are fucking hot as hell.
My only thing was like I thought that there was some really weird editing choices throughout the thing that would throw me. Like there'd be like we'd have like this long, beautiful piece of dialogue where they're just going back and forth, and all of a sudden there's a weird close-up because we're in a different scene. And that was what was jarring to me. But like all in all, like I can see why this is a film for film lovers, and I adore it. I was in it.
Yeah. Man, you know, like this was the strangest episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians I've ever seen, bruh. There was a lot more twists and turns and backstabbings than like your average cringe anime from 2005. And also, not since Christmas with the Cranks did I want someone to be brutally murdered on Christ's birthday. You know, like, oh god, no, I digged it, but like, it's one of those things like if the movie were thankfully the movie didn't in my opinion, overindulge the whole like I'm smarter than you. Well, I'm smarter than you. I'm gonna whip my cerebral dick all over your cerebral dick and whatnot. Like the amount of plotting in this, like okay, like especially since they're royals, it makes sense. It totally makes sense. Like you see this all, you see this with fucking like Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, but in this 2-hour movie, I don't think they ever did it to the extent that this film did it. But like, yeah, the talent pool in this film so great. Even the pathetic assholes that are in the movie, which I just wanted to see killed. Like as much as I hated them, as like no, like they're performing good. Like they're doing a good job. If I want them to die, and not because of their performance, but because their characters are so detestable and like feeble and disgusting. So yeah, I did not expect to like this movie as much as I did. And oh my god, you were just in the corner like, ooh, ooh.
I was.
Eleanor, you tell them. I'm just kidding.
Kind of, yes. The whole time. Eleanor, like, honestly, I just, if that's all I want to be when I'm 70.
Man, more power, more problems.
Something like
I
that.
gotta say, A- minus on JP's book. Would recommend.
I'll go ahead because I'm gonna be brief and quick. My first impression, when I started watching the actual movie, maybe it's because it's like one of my points of references, or maybe something did remind me. There's definitely a line that did remind me. It wasn't quite the actual line, but it did remind me. For some reason, at the beginning of this film, it gave me like Mel Brooks vibe. So I had like a slight hope that there was going to be some comedy, and there is like slight, some in a way-ish comedy, but then it turns into a more like, at least it felt to me like almost like a Latino telenovela or something. Like a lot of the plot lines of like all these different mistresses and like all these different relationship dynamics throughout the movie. So it made it much more interesting. I wish I would have finished the movie. I only watched half, so that's why I can't contribute too much. But I would say that for being a movie of this period piece that typically I don't personally like, I was enjoying it a lot, and I'm definitely gonna finish that movie.
I like the comedy in it too, because like even though it takes place in the dead of winter where it's all cold, you know that those guys kept themselves warm with the amount of roastings they did with each other.
Nice. I'll go ahead real quick. Oh, so many first impressions. I will say, can't say I love this movie. I liked it, but there are some things I really love about the movie. I was getting huge "Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf" vibes from this. Also, Timothy Dalton. I mean, all of them, seeing them young, but all I could think of Timothy Dalton was a combination of evil Spock, just of that like hairline. You couldn't see the ears. I was thinking of that. I thought the acting was superb. Like all of them, just seeing. I'm a sucker for Peter O'Toole. Just seeing like there's this. This is I think when Michaela said about the cinema, for film people or cinema, it's like it's literally a time capsule of a moment of having some of the most iconic performers do their stuff, like that period, end of the 60s before you get into the 70s. It's like the old guard, if you will, of acting. And there's something about Peter O'Toole that does so good of like yelling acting, like 100 decibels or higher of just yelling, just like incoherent. You can't understand. And then he goes so softly and be able to, and then like throughout the whole movie, just like Peter O'Toole being able to play with the sounds that he is able to do is like you don't see it as much. It's not, and again, there is, I think, for our time, a lot of overacting in the movie. That's why people are kind of saying soap opera. But it's on a whole nother level with it, and I love that seeing that of Peter O'Toole. Yeah, Anthony Hopkins. Yeah, of the age thing, the same thing can be said for Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, in Sean Connery and Harrison Ford only being like 8 years apart or whatever, and he plays his dad. And isn't it Menace to Society or one of those movies? Isn't that the weird age thing as well, Jason?
Menace
the dad?
Society.
Yeah, or one of those. Isn't it like the dad is actually like 2 years older? No, the son is actually like 2 years older than the dad actor. Anyway, I thought there was
Menace
something like that.
Society.
Yeah, in one of those movies
I don't think so.
from that
Well,
type.
all those guys had it easy to compare to like Angela Lansbury, who played 80 by the time she was 14. So
Sure. I mean, all of this, I was getting some Succession vibes as well. Like, yeah, you got Shakespeare, clearly that it came before that. And then you have just like playwright. I mean, it's based on a play, I believe. So it's language heavy. It's like, it almost makes me think of like, if Tarantino were writing movies back then, what kind of dialogue he'd be doing. Anyway, so yeah, I didn't love the movie. I enjoyed it. I liked it, but there's things from it that I loved. Oh, and Peter O'Toole was like literally hugging the scenery. Like half the movie, he's just like holding on, walking across, like just holding on to pillars.
he got it from the Marlon Brando School of Acting. That's what that was.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that's kind of my first impression.
So I think I'm back. I think it's working now. For me, myself, I watched this movie when I was like 23 or 24, and older. And the reason is I was watching The West Wing, and there was a scene with Martin Sheen where he says, they're talking about his favorite movie, and the line, when the fall is all that's left, it matters a great deal, which comes up like towards the end of the film. And I was like, I wonder what this movie is that they were talking about. So I looked it up then, and then I found out it had this, following. It was obviously like an Oscar-winning movie. It also apparently is the inspiration for something I've never seen before, which is Empire. I know the television show. I've never watched it. Have you guys ever seen Empire?
Yeah.
I know of it.
I didn't know that Empire was based on this. I knew it was King Lear, but this is basically similar to King Lear, and he even mentions that like in the opening like sequence.
Yeah. So in online, it said something about that. Actually, the premise though is based on, surprisingly, was based on this. Some of the things, but yes, definitely had King Lear in there as well. So for me, this was, it's the staccato of the movie's quite long. It's not short. But it's the staccato of them going back and forth the entire time. And some of the lines are like, why did you never think of, or you don't think of me very much? And he's like, much? I don't think of you at all. And there's just so many things the entire time that are like so hard at each other. And The Lion in Winter is basically, I was like looking up what the title is. It's basically in reference to a person that's like an aging king, but still has a lot, like, still badass, even though they're aging. And the whole idea of like, at that point, what do you decide to do? What is your legacy going to be, and how are you going to hand it off? So for me, the biggest thing is I couldn't remember how this movie ended. That was a big part of it for me too. I had seen the movie, I think 2 or 3 times, and I was like, I don't remember how this ends. Like, does someone die? I don't remember. And the ending is basically like, you just go on. It's like, it doesn't go away. Like, the movie does not change at all. Like, the experiences of these people are not going to change at all. So for me, that was my initial impression. It started off, I had watched this television show and they had referred to it, and I was like, I'm going to check this out. The next thing I wanted to look into is like, who do you think was the worst off person in the movie? Like, who had it the worst?
I think the one who had it the worst was the one who had the most control of the situation. That was Catherine's character. Like, she has to deal with all these fucking dum-dums as a lady. And like, also like she She only comes for every holidays. Like that's a very bad settlement deal, isn't that? Like you can't see your family. You only see them like every Easter, every Christmas. And you know what? This probably happens every holiday. All this, murder and plot and whatnot. She has to deal with all that, and she has the title of queen, but she doesn't have that much power. I think she, out of every one of these dumb fucks, is the one who has it the worst, just because she has to deal with the most, because she has to deal with everyone's bullshit, and she has to deal with them, like not as often as Henry, but like I feel like Henry is willingly ignorant to half the shit that's going on, but like poor Eleanor on her in like solitary in France is like, fuck me, they're doing it again.
Well, it's also because like she's a woman. Like she knows exactly where she stands, and that's why her and Alice are such interesting foils. Because Alice literally has that young naivete where it's like love will win all. Like just because I love you, like I can become this horrible thing. Whereas Eleanor is just like, no, honey. Like I know where I stand. I know that I don't have nothing. I know that like I can't sleep my way out of this. I know, like, and I've tried.
If we're being honest on who had it worse in the movie, it's the one guard that got murked. That guard that's just trying to do his job gets murked by his own comrade. No, I would say Alice has the worst, right? But I mean, clearly, Eleanor was also in the same boat. Like Alice was sent there at 7 years old, already like was supposed to marry, like all this stuff, and then that happens to her. Oh, was Alice supposed to marry Henry Jr., the first son, or was she always supposed to be rich?
Yes, she was supposed to marry their firstborn son, but then Henry died tragically, and then Alice was set to be, or was like supposed to marry either Richard, who like everyone thought was first in line, but nobody wanted Richard because Richard is his own man, so they tried to get her hooked to John.
Got it. No, I knew that. I just thought of that. But I would say Alice, right? You're like, shit, I'm in this. I got no say whatsoever.
Like, she's so young and she's so like innocent. Like she's supposed to be like the one decent person in all of this, So like that has to be rough too, to be like, hey guys, can we just like be nice? No, great.
Yeah,
Can you guys
feel like
not
she's so
test me?
naive, right? So she's the
Yeah.
only one that doesn't understand what's actually happening the entire time.
Can you not pass me around like the town bicycle? That'd be great. Thanks.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would concur that Alice probably has it the worst. I mean, she's basically, I mean, she says it herself. She's a pawn in all of this. She's a baby making empire conjuncting pawn. That's her entire purpose in life. She doesn't have a say where she goes or who she's with. She's managed to fall like deeply in love with Henry and like has all this loyalty to him. And it means something to Henry. It means a great deal, but it also means nothing.
Yeah. She's passed around so much. There was a point in the film where like I thought her name was Aquitaine. It was like, wait, is that like her surname? It's like, no, that's the fucking land that she's being used as a bargaining chip. It's like, oh, got it.
Well, I mean, and that's why she makes, like I said, like she makes such an interesting foil to Eleanor, because like you can see how Alice could easily become that same kind of woman. How easy that would or maybe even like how it's inevitable that she's probably going to end up becoming that in order to just like survive these horrible politics of her time.
She showed glimpses of it because she was basically like, sure, you can get an annulment, whatever, we can marry and I'll give you boys, but the minute you die, I'm dead and your sons are going to be dead. right? Like she at that moment she like had that maturity of just like, unless you go and you kill them right now, your new sons and me are gonna be dead by the, you know. He looked really good for a 50-year-old. I'll say that. I'm hoping 50 is the new Peter O'Toole, the Lion in the Winter.
I think it's kind of messed up too. Like she never went to her brother. Like clearly that's not, you know, and at no point does she go to Timothy Dalton and say like, hey, you know, I'm in this situation, and you know, like she doesn't try and use him to make it. She's, you know, she just is a pawn, and she accepts that. She never goes to Timothy Dalton and tries to work it out. I mean, he's king, and he's clearly very young, but at no point was there any kind of conversation. That kind of surprised me in the movie as well.
No, that's interesting.
Well, I mean, it's because it was like something that they did a long time ago, and like he wouldn't do anything, and she knows that. You know, like yeah, he's her brother, but like the way that women were treated at the time, like
yeah, I mean, when you were saying Eleanor was stuck in a tower. Like she legitimately, when she was not with him, she was stuck at a place in a tower. She was not allowed to travel at all, anything. And I believe it had been 10 years since she had been out at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No, I think it was 10 years since she's been in the tower, but they keep saying she's only brought out
right for holidays. That's what I mean. She can't like go travel anywhere or do anything else.
Right. For 10 years, she's
aspect that like y'all aren't talking about. It's just like the fact that not only are these women bargaining chips, but they're supposed to also show that the king is pure and good. You know, like they're all for the show to show the king's piety. You know, like that's why they have to go to the Pope to get married. That's what, like, you know, like that's why they have to get the annulment. Why that's such a big deal. Like, yes, everyone knows that everyone sleeps with everyone else, but we all like to pretend that this is what, like, that we are good people, and that's also like another chip that these women have to like bury. Because like, if Alice did ask to come home, that would be a mark on her honor as a woman, you know, like if she went home, they would be like, well, why were you sent back? Like, there's no way you could have chosen that for yourself. Why would you like say no to a king?
I think the chickens also had it pretty bad in this movie.
Yes, the chickens.
There was a live mauling. There was someone was defeathering a chicken too, if I remember correctly.
By the dog.
Can we talk about how many dogs they had in that stinky old castle?
Right?
Yeah.
Like that place was a mess. There was hay all in the hallways, and the animals are peeing and pooping everywhere, and like this place is a filth bucket.
You see that many dogs, but you know what you don't see? Rats. So no rats.
No rats.
Because then dogs be eating them rats.
Also probably eating the scraps too. Like that's what I thought. I was like, oh, they're just there to eat the fucking trash that these assholes are leaving.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're leaving it everywhere. There's literally hay and straw in the hallways.
Well, I think that's to help with the moisture during winter.
Oh, that might be a thing. And maybe, you know, something for the dogs to pee on.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you think had it worse, Ray? The dogs or the women?
I think Jason had it the worst, like cringing while watching the movie and thinking about how dirty it was.
It's true. Did you guys also catch in the beginning of the film when he first has the first scene with Katharine Hepburn, and or I think it's Katharine Hepburn. It's one of the ladies, and he says, "I've had concubines, prostitutes, whores, little boys."
Yes.
Like we know that what's happening. I was really surprised they wrote it into the script.
That was the next thing I was going to bring up, and I think it's important because of that scene with Anthony Hopkins later on when he's like embarrassed by being gay in front of his father. But meanwhile, they had just talked. I mean, he had talked about that earlier, and he was blatantly honest about it. I thought the same thing. That was the next thing I was going to bring up, to be honest.
I guess in their mind, it's like, oh, it's a little boy, so that's something different. To my perversion. But as far, you know, I kind of agree with Raymond. Like this thing sort of felt like very Game of Thrones. I'm like, someone's going to get their head knocked off at any moment. But then, like, it got very like manipulative and like maniacal when the King of France said like, oh no, I wasn't I wasn't actually in love with your son. I played him or whatever, which is kind of like, we don't know if he was telling the truth or not. You know what I mean? It all was lies. He could have actually like really had like legitimate feelings for Richard, or whatever their experience was, could have been legitimate, but then he has to play it another way. And then that shows us how hurt Richard is. And like, now he's very vulnerable and on the chopping block. And I thought all that was super interesting too. I like, oh, this thing's about to get wicked.
Talking about the editing, that I do agree with Michaela that she said earlier that there's some weird editing, but that editing of shots back and forth between Timothy Dalton, King of France, saying the shit like, I never loved him, like I just let him, do his thing, and it just keeps cutting back to Sir Anthony, Oscar winner actor, and there's just a sliver of light and he's still kind of hiding there. And like, yeah, that being his like first movie and he's showing all that emotion just like hiding in the behind the curtains is like, was done really great. And but then just how we said we couldn't believe the French king, I don't know if we could believe King Henry at the beginning when he was listing off all the, I've slept with this and that and little boys. I think, especially early on and throughout, he would do stuff to rile people up. So you could kind of say the same thing, that maybe he hasn't been with, a whole list of trove or whatever. Anyway, that was
the
it.
king. He has. The king has.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know I cut off Michaela also in the.
No, I was just kidding. I was just agreeing with you because, like, I think that's my favorite scene or like bit of acting in the whole thing is Anthony Hopkins and the French Prince. Like that scene is just like, I couldn't believe that this was made in '68 and they wrote it like that, and Hopkins just adds this layer of sincerity in this that's so tender and sweet, but isn't like overtly, like the way he played it was just so like, it's so good.
Like,
it's so good.
You get that, oh shit, like you just broke this poor bastard's heart.
Like you could time it. You could see the
just pause it.
Shatters.
You got Timothy Dalton literally being Bully McGuire. It's like, oh, you gonna cry now? You gonna cry? I'm French. I fuck everything that moves, but we don't love you, wiener.
Well, but I also think that's part of why it was powerful, because like, why can't both be true? Like, why can't they both be true? Because like it started off as him manipulating. He did end up falling in love, but at the end of the day, this is for revenge. Yeah.
I mean, it could have been him playing the long game. I mean, that's totally possible because he's like wants to get revenge for his father and all that jazz for how his father was treated. So he could have been like holding these little back cards, these little back gambits in his back pocket. Or he could just be like, hey, these are cards that I have to play in this moment and I got to use them.
I mean, the whole time he must have been sitting there just waiting for people to be revealed. Like that had to feel so good. Like I thought the best part of Anthony Hopkins was realizing they kept showing him when they showed somebody come from behind the curtain that wasn't him. And each time he was like, oh, that person now knows my whole story. That person now knows my whole story. I agree 100%. That scene for me was by far the best scene in the movie. Definitely showed a lot of levels of him. And he went through not only like the love of Timothy Dalton, but also like as Henry's son. Remember, he was like, I crawled to you. I begged for you. I did all these things for you. But his beard game was on. I mean, Anthony Hopkins killed it in this movie. Absolutely.
Yeah, that whole scene was very Shakespearean for me. It felt like a Shakespearean comedy in that moment. I'm like, this thing, it felt like it could be very tragic or very comedic at any given moment with that. Like, oh, everybody comes falling out and tumbling out of their curtain. Crazy,
Especially when they're hiding behind a curtain.
It just felt like at any moment. That scene, there was a lot of stake and there's a lot of tension, and the King of France just kept inviting everybody into the room, like, hey, come on in, everybody. Like the whole family. I'm gonna embarrass this whole family before the night's out.
Also, Well, and like I said, it's just like the thing that like blows me away is the fact that like he took this script and he made the choices for this character the way he did, you know, because like it's still a very like Richard is still a very strong man who's very sure of himself, and I feel like a lot of people would have chosen to like overcompensate to a like severe degree, so like it would have seemed more comedic. But no, like I feel like if I was like going to film school, like I'd probably write an entire thesis about this. I love that performance so much.
To your point, there's that scene at the very, very beginning where he's holding the sword and he's like battling somebody and he has this intenseness, like, and you don't know what's happening, like why they're fighting at first. And then he's going to kill him almost like they're in battle. And here it's like a jousting situation and someone has to run over and be like, whoa, calm down. So that like, you're right. Like it showed like there were multiple facets to this character right away. He was super intense. And that's why like the breakdown was so good as the movie went on. Really revealing all the parts of him.
Yeah, no, like, such a great performance.
Ray just dropped in. He had to leave, but he just dropped in his own casting of the film. Like if you recast the film. So is it cool if I read it?
Yeah, go
all
for
right,
it.
so it's for King Henry. He said Bryan Cranston would make a good King Henry.
Sure.
Which is funny because the costume design was one of the things that won for an Oscar. And Peter O'Toole only weighs like 180 pounds, but clearly they were trying to make him look larger. You know, they put a lot of clothing on him. They grew his beard out because he's a really thin guy in general. He's like 6'2", 6'3". So that was part of it too. And that's kind of funny because Bryan Cranston has that way about him that he could probably handle that too, you know, and play a role of a bigger person.
He definitely looks like him with long hair and long beard. If you've seen Bryan Cranston, I think right now he's rocking the long beard. And definitely look and keep reading the other acting choices.
Yeah, these are great. The King of France is Prince.
Yeah.
He had like a Ming vibe. I don't know if you guys talked about that.
Yeah.
I brought up that he looked like evil Spock.
Yeah.
I love Adam Driver as. That's who I thought. I was like,
he's too pretty.
Too pretty?
Too pretty to be Adam Driver. Adam Driver, it's got like a little bit of funk to his face. Whereas this guy, like, he was so smooth. Like, he could have been plastic.
He was perfect.
Is that who he picked? Adam Driver as the King of France?
No, that's who JP picked.
That's who I picked.
I don't think that's a bad pick.
No, like I think it'd be interesting casting, but I'd much rather see Driver do either Richard or the middle son.
You know, Zach Galifianakis as Richard. That's an interesting choice.
There we go.
You would think Zach Galifianakis would actually be John, the young stupid one, right? The feeble-minded one.
No, I like what Ray put. Timothy Chalamet. That guy's an asshole.
Chalamet honestly could pull off the role as any of the brothers.
Yeah.
I think he's capable.
They would have to buff him up, I think, to be Richard, which, I mean, they could, right? Just
well,
look
he's in a movie.
tougher.
He's in a Netflix movie called The King, where he plays the King of England, and he's dope.
Yeah.
Is it Sword in the Stone?
No, I'm just trying to remember like which one that one was supposed to be based off of. Like, because like that's another thing is like all of these are based off of Dark Age, like English history.
Yeah, I think The King is based on a true story. It's when they go to war with France or whatever. But
which time?
Yeah, which time? I don't know. I have to look. But I do recommend that movie, especially if you want to see Timothy Chalamet basically played that role that we just talked about. Like as thin as he is, he's quite capable.
I just love that he put Robert Pattinson as the other one, and I know it's Jeffrey. But that's great because that's how he's treated. Is like that guy. Not even John, the young one, is treated like that. It's like, that guy.
And Patterson actually is in that movie too, playing the King of France. So I think Ray is just recasting that movie at this point.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, so for anybody that wasn't here last week, when we put up the movie poster, they must have done like, yes, that is so random. The Lion in Winter poster, like, this looks terrible to me. I can't imagine this was good. It's like a Hallmark version of the movie.
It's the wig for me, man. It's Patrick Stewart's wig is throwing me
Professor
off.
X did not have hair. Yeah. It
It's
looks
just-
like Richard Gere in that
I was thinking the same thing.
Camelot
Totally.
movie.
Certainly he's a Lancelot or whatever he's supposed to be.
Yeah, totally.
That's
It's way more
like,
of that.
I see Stewart at least once a month.
That's just, I think it's crazy too that Hallmark was able to afford those people. Like Glenn Close and like, were they bored?
You see,
It's just that what they couldn't afford was a good graphic designer to make a better poster.
that is true.
That poster's terrible.
It's a weird thing. Patrick, yeah, Peter O'Toole definitely not 50, but he just looked gritty, right? Which I'm like, sure, maybe he is 50. That Patrick Stewart is just like too clean to be 50, right? Like he's pristine.
He's like
He
another
looks-
one who's like been 60 since he's been 30.
Yeah, I agree. That looks like he was in a Star Trek
McGonagall,
episode.
What's her name?
Angela, like they have a club. They have
Yeah.
a club.
The I've been old since I was 10 club.
Yeah, I don't know. Is there
True
a
that.
young Patrick Stewart movie out there? Like, I don't even know if there. I've never seen Patrick Stewart with hair. I don't think.
Well, you know what's funny?
Yeah.
I went back and watched the pilot episode of Star Trek New Generation, and Patrick Stewart is really young in that. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, he's bald, but he's probably always been bald. He looks. It's weird.
Yeah,
how
he was
young
rocking. He was rocking the side hair for a good while. I don't know the different types of.
I've seen some
Alden,
photos with him doing theater with real hair, but
Yeah,
he hasn't had hair in ages.
he just accepted it.
Kind of like how Steve Martin has always had white hair. You know?
Yeah, that's true too. Always. It's like signature.
Yeah, they
Pretty
all
much.
have like
And
okay, car.
he did have long hair.
So the other big thing in the movie is the costume design, and again, the background in the movie, like the boats and things that they used. I was wondering, like the budget-wise, like what this probably cost. I mean, I know that a lot of the scenes were in castles and things like that, but there was other scenes outside that seemed more large. I didn't do a whole lot of research into where it was filmed, but I would imagine that it cost a decent amount of money at that time. Luckily for them, they got some solid actors that, Peter O'Toole clearly and Katharine Hepburn, they had to pay, I'm sure. But when it came to like, Timothy Dalton, I believe they said he was 21 when the movie was made. Timothy Dalton. He became, that's James Bond. And then Anthony Hopkins, that was his first feature film, like in a starring role where he was not like a side character. So I can't imagine, I don't know, but budget wise, I know that it surpassed what it was supposed to do. And it was not originally supposed to be a giant epic. And then when they got bigger actors, then it became a bigger movie. It originally wasn't supposed to be a mainstream movie.
Mhm.
It was built off a play. And it's
That
the
makes
same
a
screenwriter.
lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense, actually, especially since like how much of it is people talking at each other.
Right. So you could do it on a small scale.
Because like that was something I was thinking about too. Like as an actor, is like so many of these scenes like would be such a fun scene to just go at it. As like
Yeah.
from an acting perspective, like some juicy parts.
I-
Like,
I-
that's what I felt.
At the end of
According
the
to
movie, at this,
IMDb, it was a $4 million budget in 1968.
Mm.
And it did say at the end of the movie that they filmed in location in Wales, I want to say Scotland, and maybe one other place in location, and then in studios. So, but it definitely said Wales and Scotland. So probably what you see as castles is one of the ones there, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of just one-on-one and a lot of hallway talking shots, which is kind of West Wing type stuff in the TV show, where it's just them walking and talking through all
the camera is definitely a character in the West Wing, like where it follows along the entire. It's definitely part of the cast for the show. It seems like. But yeah, I mean, like I said, that's how I originally heard of this movie. Not really. I mean, I'd heard of it, but I didn't know what it was at all. And I definitely feel like it definitely comes off as it's been majorly influenced by Shakespeare, and clearly the guy wrote it that way. It is interesting that he wrote it so well for different genders as well. You know, the female lines are super solid. Katharine Hepburn has some of the best lines in the movie by far. Her digs are way hard.
Man.
And her power, like as being a prisoner, man, she can still hurt Henry at many times in the movie. She hurts him at times with her words. You know,
it's just, oh god, it's just so great how petty these people can be. And I can't believe they brought it up like multiple times. The whole like you know, I probably fucked your dad, right? It's like, no, you didn't. You didn't. She did it like what 3 times in the film.
Yep, and she also insinuated that it was better too.
Oh god.
Yeah.
You could hear me moaning in the next room. I think she said that.
Yeah, nope. Definitely like the ultimate version of your dad.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, she knew what buttons to push to hurt him. You know, I think that was a big part of all that too. Just like kind of giving you an idea of how well they know each other. You know, and how far back they go. You know, and they've just all been kind of tied up in this web together. This really the self-imposed web. Like none of them truly chose any of this for their life, even though they're like royalty and, you know, they're above everybody and they're not peasants. I mean, they're still born into this situation where they don't really have a say. Even the king doesn't really have a say. Like he just sort of has to do this thing. Luckily for him, you know, he has the ambition to push, you know, England forward. So he sort of fits the role of king in that regard. He could have been a very different type of king, but none of these people really chose their existence.
Yeah, and I think, dude, like, how hard is it? Like, when it comes to choices, he chose John of all people. That, like, out of the 3 sons, like the fact that he chooses this kid, like the guy can't even put a sentence together half the time, or he just gets lost all the time. He has no backbone whatsoever. Like Jeffrey never gets a chance, and we know he's conniving and all, but why he never gets any chance whatsoever? I don't know if it's because of maybe who his mother was, like, because I believe Richard is Eleanor's only, right?
Yeah, Richard is only Eleanor's, or well, no, they're all 3 her kids.
Oh, they are? Okay.
It's just Richard was her first son, which is why she was very protective of him. Whereas Jeffrey, it's literally just because he's the middle child.
Yeah.
You know, like, at a certain point, like even if you show promise, it's not something that you can.
Not only that, like every time she brought up the dad, like the grandfather, like the grandfather was named after the grandfather. So far as like that's probably why too, like he hates his dad so much, like this little shit that's named after his own father's it's basically like shut up, Meg.
Well,
see, I might be wrong about this.
Go on.
I might be wrong about this, but I assumed, just by the way they were talking about Jeffrey, is that Jeffrey was like the most level-headed one. That's why, like, you're going to be the chancellor no matter what, whether I'm king or whether your brother's king. Your job is chancellor. We need you to hold all. Yeah, you got to hold all this stuff together. You have the power to like hold the bank book in the family, and that's what we want you to do.
Yeah,
and deal with other people.
Doesn't
he bring it up also that I thought it was because the other 2 are too smart or strong, whereas John, Richard no, Henry can still kind of stay in power as having John as the one that's going to succeed him. Or even if Henry decides to maybe step down, he can still be running things through John, right? As well as have the girl. Because the other, so I thought it was just like, yeah, you pick your weakest one because then you can still control them, right? Because then he's still kind of youthful. Well, he's naive, dumb, ignorant. I don't know, inbred as well is what I was getting from the acting choices.
Mm-hmm.
See, that was the first moment where I thought, like, I don't know if this movie is going to be acted well or not, because Peter O'Toole comes on with this very, regalitality, this very regale sort of acting in high language Shakespearean theater kind of thing, and then John comes in, he's all kooky, and I'm like, oh, is it one of those things? Is it like, what am I getting into? So yeah, but I mean, once you see it all together, it sort of makes sense.
Right.
It's a little bit over the top. His performance.
It is over the top. It is, but it works for. It's over the top, but it works. It works for its thing.
And it just also seems to me that like John was Henry's favorite. Like that's part of why they like the mom uses John so much as like a sticking point. It's not only is he kind of the weakest minded, but like they're all insinuating that this is the man who's going to be taking over the kingdom after Henry dies. So I don't think Henry would be the kind of guy who'd be like, oh yeah, you don't know what you're doing, go forth. Because once I'm out, like I think if he wants his legacy to last, which is why it's such a blow when he realizes how weak a man the son he raised was, because like he has like, that's the moment his brain snapped, when he realized that John was actually plotting and John didn't even have the courage to tell him. He literally went like, I don't know what's going on. Can I just go to bed? Oh no!
I need a nap, Dad.
Yeah, and his reason was just that he didn't get it yet. It was like he was so set up to take over, and then like he wasn't getting it yet, and that was his whole reasoning behind like getting upset and being there and plotting against his dad.
Well, he is the first one to lunge at his dad, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which was just weird. It's like, why are you doing this to yourself?
Like to the point where it's just like,
yeah, it's just like, come on, man. Like you're gonna make the move to kill your dad. All right.
So as we head into the final landing, one thing I had a question about was, what do you think? Like, what's the ending of the movie is everything kind of just returns, right? Like, it made me think, like, I wish I knew what was coming, like, and trying to, like, what would I wrap my head around? Like, what did happen after that? It's hard to, like, kind of, you know what I mean? It really goes right back to status quo. The stasis never changed for the film. Like, at the end, stasis is the same as it was at the very, very beginning.
I like to think that this happens every holiday. Like just like there are 8 different movies where this is just a recurring thing. Where it's like, because I also
in one of them,
right? It's my headcanon that the guard who got killed, since there's no blood on the knife, they were in on it too. It's like just pretend, do it for Eleanor. Once we're out of frame, just go back to lunch or whatever. Go get
like
some.
The different Ernest movies that are very much themed, and like Ernest Saves Halloween and all this.
Goes to camp.
It's like the Lion in Easter, the Lion in Halloween. every
you're right.
holiday.
Nothing really happens in this thing. Like when it comes full circle, we're right back where we started when the movie ends. The only thing is that like the audience just got to sit in on it to learn who this family is.
Right.
Like now we know who the family is through them just, being themselves, but nothing actually happens. No one's better for having learned any of this. No one's journey has elevated them. They're all still the same people. I mean, they're just exposed more.
And no one's
the one that I guess King of France, right? He kind of has the upper hand because clearly this is the first time he's come to give an ultimatum, right? Before they all talk about, I mean, they even mentioned that Leonor had tried to kill him, right? Or plotted against him. That's basically why she's in jail, because she already had tried to do that before. So the only thing I can think of at the end of the movie is like, well, we'll be back at it. But King of France pulled he came out the victor, you know?
Well, isn't it weird that they're nearly about to go to war and they're negotiating war like at least 3 times in this film, but then he's staying in the guest room
With no guards. That's what I thought was weird. He's just hanging out. No guards, no nothing. I love the line. I was like, we all got knives.
Yeah.
Maybe it's that old saying, kings don't kill kings.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, I mean, he was clearly wise beyond his years.
What ends up happening after this, because this is actually based off of history, fun fact, of Henry II. What happens is Geoffrey dies. Henry tries to figure out something so like both of them don't ever have to fight again, but he still favors John. So Richard rebels and starts a civil war with Philip, the King of France, and King Henry ends up dying of an ulcer, and Richard takes over.
Oh,
Wait, what? Say that again.
All the land that they conquered. Like, so.
Can you repeat that again?
Yes. So basically, what happens is King Henry decides to like do like this thing between him and John because Geoffrey dies soon after the middle son dies. And then so John and Richard are kind of like hand in hand, and Henry's trying to figure out the best way so they can both have the same amount of power without breaking up the empire. And then Richard started fearing that he was going to choose John, who like everyone knew John was unstable. And so he and Philip end up teaming up and start a civil war, which ends up ultimately breaking Henry's empire when Henry passes away and John fucks things up. So then Richard comes in, kicks John's ass, and takes over.
Isn't there a famous historical person named Richard the Lionheart? I wonder if that has anything to do with, like, I wonder if that's how they chose this name.
Yep.
You know,
probably.
Could very well be. Now, okay, here's this. This is interesting, Michaela. So that got me thinking about the plot of the movie The King on Netflix. And so I just pulled up the synopsis, and it says, young Henry V encounters deceit, war, and treachery after becoming King of England in the 15th century in the aftermath of his brother's death.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like 300 years later, right?
Yeah.
So you're like almost close to 1200. That would be like 15th century would be like 1400.
Yeah, because it's 1168.
They're so lazy with naming their children.
Henry Richard. That's it.
Oh,
so,
you know the biggest disappointment for me of the movie, I guess, you know, we've been talking for a while. What the hell were the Christmas gifts?
Oh no, we never got wow, that was bull hockey.
So when they said it was going to be Christmas morning, like oh yeah, it's Christmas morning. I'm like, oh, finally we get to see what's in that big red gift.
Mm-hmm.
What did he say?
It was such a great line.
Oh, you shouldn't have.
Yeah.
It was so great. It was like, oh, this feels heavy. Man, she was wrapping them. I hope there's somewhere where that could maybe pop up as Easter eggs, or just like, this is what they all were getting.
I'm sure there's a Reddit hole that you can go on that already has this all figured out somewhere down there.
Like someone another set of golf clubs. Gee, thanks, Mom.
Jason's hoping it was like soap, shampoo, some towels.
All hygiene products.
And then Jeffrey's is just a gift card.
A used gift card.
It's
like,
got like some remainder money on it.
Like, Jeffrey, you gotta put stuff in it. Yeah. We'll
like
find out.
Walmart gift card.
We'll find out in the sequel. The Lion Saves Christmas. and destroys half of France.
I am gonna watch the Hallmark one, by the way, at least like the first 15 minutes to see what it's like.
Yeah, I think you sort of have to now.
Yeah, totally. So maybe that's next week on. No, I'm kidding.
Imagine Glenn Close. Oh, go ahead. I was gonna say like Glenn Close says like I have to save the Aquitaine and take those puppies.
She's done other things, JP. She's done other things.
Cruella de Vil. All right. So final thoughts, friends. Final thoughts. Anyone want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll go. Final thought is this movie I feel like holds up pretty well from 1968. I think it's very brave in what they tried to do back then. I think some of the stuff now is kind of like, like there's a few things that we said, I can't believe you guys were doing that. It's very forward of you to go there, which I thought was pretty cool. I was, a little taken aback by that, or like a little stunned, I should say. I liked it. I would totally recommend this movie to people who love Shakespeare, people who love movies about royalty, people who love castle dramas, people who are into like manipulation and one-upsmanship, like Game of Thrones. I would recommend this people who are hardcore Anthony Hopkins and Katharine Hepburn and Peter O'Toole fans. If you want to see a young Timothy Dalton. So yeah, there are some reasons to watch this thing. I would perhaps watch it again under the right circumstance, maybe for research. I liked it, and yeah, that's my final thought.
I'll go. My hair is crazy. Did you say Shakespeare, or did I just hear Shakespeare? Was that just me that heard it like that?
I could have been. I don't know.
It was an IM pentameter. That's why.
Oh, okay. That's what it was. Yeah, so I enjoyed the movie. Again, there were a lot of high points in the movie. I can't say that I loved it. I don't know what. I could possibly rewatch this movie again, but it would be in a certain situation, kind of like Jason saying that if it were for research, or maybe if it's on film, on screen somewhere, because I did also like a lot of the pacing and just how they would get up and change seats, and very much like a stage play where you use the movement and stuff like that as also as part of your character and your lines. So if I had the chance to see it up on a big screen, I would probably watch it for that purpose. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I'd recommend it to people into movies, but I think more than anything, probably people that are into Peter O'Toole and Hepburn and all that kind of jazz. I just don't see myself recommending this to a bunch of people, but it is good, and I do recommend people watch this movie because it's on a lot of lists. And yeah, I was not expecting for sodomy to be a word that came up in the movie, and it did. So it's there's a lot in it. That's it.
There you go. I definitely like this movie, and I probably recommend it to like the same people who are like into The Crown, because like that show and this movie definitely just proves that royals are just fucking petty, like disgustingly petty, and just plotting all the time. It's whatever. It's great. It's language heavy. You could tell that this was a play first, because god damn it, like you could tell that the screenwriter just loves their work. So, and also if you're into old Hollywood, I definitely recommend it to that too. Like it's great seeing Katharine Hepburn like just oozing and like just fucking the camera with her way of words and her eyes, and everything like that, and that old classic mid-Atlantic like accent and whatnot. Like, is it American? Is it British? I don't know. That's how they talked. So yeah, I definitely recommend it to those type of folks. I am surprised and shocked that I enjoyed the movie as much as I did, because god damn it, it's long, and god damn it, like, everyone's an asshole in this film. But you know what? I digged it. This is basically what like Americans love, just family drama and like fighting for power and pettiness overall. So again, thumbs up, A-. Watch it if you want.
I adored the performances in this film. You know, like, I think that if you are an actor and like you really want to see like amazing scene work, you should watch this film. It is a touch long, but like honestly, the way the dialogue goes, like, it's an odd little movie too, because like I feel like it does have like that old Hollywood glam, but you can also see a lot of contemporary lighting, and it's just a really cool moment in time that we get to be a part of. And I enjoyed it. I would suggest it.
So I'm like happier than a pig in shit because I've not seen JP enjoy anything we've watched so far except for like one movie. I feel like this is a win. I'm gonna take that on. The second thing is I was trying to think of a character the whole time who I thought would play Prince Philip, and I was like, there's this actor and I can't think of who it is, but like I'm thinking it's Billy Zane. That's the guy.
Oh,
that guy playing Prince Philip.
Oh yeah. 1997, Billy Zane.
Right, that's
right
Titanic
off the
Man guy,
Titanic.
and you know,
Yeah.
Rocketeer. That's the guy that makes me. So for me personally, I'd recommend it to anybody who is especially learning how to screenwrite and wants to learn how to write. Like, it's just really good at pushing political drama back and forth. Anyone that's in that realm, like, it definitely reminds me of things like we named, like Game of Thrones and Succession, and apparently Empire, which I've never seen before, but I would like to check that out as well now. And for me, it was just something that I've seen it 2 or 3 times now, and it's something I'll probably go back to again, only because it's something I feel like I found, you know, like nobody really recommended to me except the television show in the past. All right, so we're going to kick it over. Did you have a question, Jason?
As a matter of fact, I did have a question. My question was for Steve. What do you got for us next week?
Next week, it's too soon for me to go. Of course, Chris already went. And, you know, we have to, because of his incredible attitude of this movie for not trashing it, we should pass it on to JP.
Oh my god! Oh my god! It's my turn! Oh boy, here I go again. Just throwing rocks in the toilet where they don't belong. So next week we're getting back into the sequel. These are our movies of choice, but there's a twist. So
What?
number one is these are all sequels and prequels to films that we have seen in the past. Number one is Abbott and Costello meet the killer Boris Karloff. Number two is A Fistful of Dollars. Number three is Old Boy. Number four is Temple of Doom. Number 5 is Godfather Part 2. Number 6, Back to the Future Part 2. 7, Return of the Killer Tomatoes. 8, Beyond the Poseidon Adventure. 9, The Empire Strikes Back. And 10, Grease 2. And instead of doing a whole stupid marathon of all these movies and letting you guys pick, which I normally would do, I'm going to leave it up to chance. So right here, I got my
Chance the Rapper is with you?
Oh my gosh! I wish we had the budget.
He's gonna Dungeons and
Here,
Dragons.
I got my little
Nice.
cinema dice right here. We're gonna what's the word? We're gonna roll the dice on this one, and whichever number this one lands on, that's gonna be our movie. All right, so there's a few good movies in there, so I sure hope that the dice picks one of them. Let's see. And that is
3.
I think so. That's 3. So which one was number 3? Let's figure out. Oh boy! All right, so our next movie is gonna be Old Boy, thus completing the Vengeance trilogy that we've been watching literally since I think the beginning of doing this. So I think that's great. The dice was in our favor. So yeah, next movie.
I am not looking forward to this. That's all I'm gonna say.
I have not seen this. I've heard of it. Is this like Hostel?
It's no, it's not. But I think
it's not
my
like
personal opinion,
but it's hostile.
It's very hostile. I think it's the
for
most
your mind.
creative of the Vengeance trilogy.
Oh.
Yeah, the first one we saw was gnarly. The second one was weird.
Second one was so good.
This one's gonna destroy you.
Yay!
Yeah, this will be an interesting one to talk about for sure.
There you have it. So, Old Boy next week for Michaela and JP, Jason Echols, Sorry Guy, aka Chris, El Dandino, and me, Steve Destiny, and Raymond that was here earlier. We'll catch you next week. Bye bye.